Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, new legislation from the province about bike lanes has advocates in our city asking the government to stay out of their lanes. Plus, tonight you might be able to catch a glimpse of a rare comet. We'll tell you where to look. And we check in on the Windsor Battery plant. 1 year to go before it fully opens. That's later this evening. Let's start with that proposed legislation about bike lanes. It's looking to limit where cities can put them. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa spoke to advocates about the potential impact on Windsor cyclists.
It is important to ensure that we do not make it worse and we don't add on to the gridlock that we are facing.
To reduce traffic jams, Ontario's Minister of Transportation is looking at tightening bike lane policies. Municipalities will have to apply to the province to put in bike lanes that remove a lane of traffic. And the city has to show that the bike lane won't negatively impact traffic.
Strategically placed bike lanes are a vital part of every city, offering residents a safe and a reliable way to move around. What cities should not be doing, however, is taking away lanes of traffic on our most congested roads.
I think that the province needs to get in their own lane.
Windsor cycling advocate Lori Newton says congested roads are a Toronto problem. She worries these new rules will further discourage Windsor City Council from putting in bike lanes.
If this moves forward, there's no question that this is going to be an impediment to Ontario becoming bike friendly. And this, speaks to our climate change initiatives. This speaks to accessibility, equity on our streets.
This avid cyclist bikes about 200 kilometers weekly. He says restricting bike lanes to reduce gridlock doesn't make sense.
If you want to reduce congestion, the way to do that is to reduce the number of cars on the road during peak periods, and to do that, advocate and improve public transportation and cycling.
Meanwhile, one local MPP says Windsor likely won't be impacted by the new rules.
The amount of congestion that Windsor experiences is much less than what they're experiencing in the city of Windsor, or city of Toronto rather. The chances of a project being held up by the province is pretty slim.
Dowie says there's no extra work involved. Cities just have to submit their traffic assessment, which is what's already required, to move forward with the bike lanes. The new policies will be introduced once the legislature is back next week. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
An extremely rare celestial event is happening now. A comet that hasn't been seen here for 80,000 years is viewable from our region. While the comet was on clear display this weekend, Dale Molnar tells us the show is not over.
It's called the Chuchunsan Atlas Comet, or Comet A3. It was discovered last year at observatories in South Africa and China. It's visible in the western sky just above the horizon about 40 minutes after sunset. Randy Groundwater is with the Royal Astronomical Society's Windsor chapter. He suggests first locating Venus as the comet will be appearing between that planet and another bright star.
You will see a very bright object on the horizon, almost looks like an airplane light. That's the planet Venus. And to its upper right is another bright golden colored star called Arcturus. The two most important things to look for in choosing a site to view the comet is a horizon looking towards the west after sunset that is free of trees or houses or any obstructions as much as is possible. And also to get away from the lights of the city as much as you can, as much as is practical.
And if you have a pair of binoculars, that's better. And just slowly scan the sky, just look up from the horizon, just start looking around, and you might see it.
Bob McDonald, the host of CBC's Quirks and Quarks, says this comet hasn't been here for 80,000 years and has come a long distance.
There's a group of snowballs that exist out beyond Neptune and Pluto called the Kuiper Belt. And it's just this sphere of ice balls that are left over from the original solar system, stuff that did not become planets. And every now and then, one of them gets knocked out of its orbit and it comes in towards the sun. And they follow very long elliptical orbits.
Sherry Lynn Koschelski is going to bring her Girl Guides out to Amherstburg to catch a glimpse.
I think it's just like being able to see the northern lights recently and the solar eclipse, and they're all just really unique things, and getting an opportunity to see them is kind of exciting.
Colton Pisano and Carter Gannon are with her robotics team that she also leads. They're excited too.
I'm not sure. Well, I've never experienced something like this before, so I think it'll be once in a lifetime opportunity to see it.
I've always been interested in space ever since I was a kid, so having the ability to see such cool events within space, such as comets passing by, is just something that we never get to experience. So being able to experience it in our lifetime is really cool.
Environment Canada climatologist Dave Phillips says it might be too cloudy to see it tonight, but it will be clear for the rest of the week.
It's wide open, and it's just absolutely, you couldn't order better sky conditions for viewing a comet or any celestial body from Wednesday on.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Kelly Kennedy joins us now for a look at weather. And yes, those comet gazers might be hoping for a look. It looks like it might be cloudy tonight, so give us a bit of a look ahead.
Yeah, you know, it's that kind of thing where, and we know this well, when we get into winter, you get the lake effect snows. And so you have areas where conditions are not good, and then just a few kilometers away, a totally different story.
So you miss it by a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, for a good chunk of southwestern Ontario, we've got the good conditions, but I'm going to kind of show you where it's a little bit different. Not lake effect snows, though, that we're dealing with. Lake effect showers, although a tiny bit of mixing into some of the higher elevations has happened or is possible. But just looking at the current temperatures, yes, single digits here all around. We've been seeing that, you know, and feeling that cooler air that's in place, a little below seasonal for us. But those sustained winds kind of coming from the north, driving across Lake Huron, and that's where there's enough of a fetch here. I mean, it's cooler air compared to, at this time of year, what are the relatively warmer waters of the lakes, and that's why we get into some of these lake effect showers. The winds at times, a little bit gusty, and we'll look at the forecast for those too coming up. But this is sort of what I'm talking about. Because of the direction of the wind, this area, you're seeing it just to the east of Sarnia, stretching down close to Chatham-Kent in that region. You know, elsewhere it might be just a few sprinkles or a millimeter or two, but here we're talking about it being more 5 to 10 millimeters or in that range. But just a bit further west, some better conditions, a few clouds, but certainly not, it's not going to ruin the comet viewing. The area where you have to watch out, though, is look at that cloud deck there. So rolling it forward through the overnight to early tomorrow morning. We will get that clearing out, though. You know what? It's going to be an improvement all around as we get to the latter part of the day Wednesday, and then moving forward from there. Wait till you see this forecast. Pretty incredible considering where we are past Thanksgiving into October. A lot of sunshine, though, once we break out of that, and we'll see that not just Thursday, but into Friday, into Saturday. It goes on past that, but I'll save that for the 5-day forecast. Here are those forecast winds, though, I did want to point out. So we get a slight change in the direction north to northwest. That will position those areas where there are some showers just a little bit further east, and then it dries up and things get better as the winds die off and there's just not enough of a fetch. But still going to have some of these gusts over 50 kilometers an hour at times, or very close to, as we look through the day on Wednesday, our hump day, and then later in the day they will be backing off, and that's why we see those showers dying off. Overnight temperatures for tonight, yes, some readings very close to freezing, like say towards London. Some patchy frost is certainly going to be possible again in certain areas tonight. Looking at our normal lows and highs, we're below that, but we don't stay there. So tomorrow's high 12, but then I want you to see what takes place after that. I didn't forget to put my icons on there, Katerina. Those are what I'm going with. High pressure, sunshine, and warmer temperatures coming our way, a string of them.
Yeah, it looks amazing. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Let's turn now to the Nextar EV Battery plant. It's now just about a year from fully opening. And as production gears up, our Dale Molnar looks into how the EV market is shaping up.
Sometime in late 2025, the Nextar battery plant will be producing the battery cells for Stellantis, and the module production is expected to start this year. But while electric vehicle sales are increasing every year, Joe McCabe of Auto Forecast Solutions doesn't believe Nextar will be up to 100% production when it begins. He says companies believe gaining market share is more important than immediate profitability.
You know, there are multiple examples we can provide of manufacturers that are underwater on their BEV strategies, with the idea that one day they're going to get there as the adoption model goes higher as costs come down. So this immediate idea that success is based on profitability, that's not going to be the case. Success is going to be on sustainability of the plant and potential growth of the plant.
McCabe says even by 2035, there will be still some internal combustion engine production.
Whether that's in plug-in hybrids or full hybrids, you're going to see new applications like extended range, where they're going to marry an existing engine to a battery, but the engine will not propel the vehicle. The battery is still going to propel the vehicle, and the government will consider that a BEV when in theory it still has an internal combustion engine making carbon.
He still feels the market will be okay for Nextar and that 25% of vehicles on the road by 2030 will be EVs. Even though tariffs are in place, the president of the Windsor Regional Chamber of Commerce says the government has to do more to make the electric vehicles cheaper, go farther on a charge, and increase the number of charging stations. And Rakesh Naidu says we have to protect our domestic production from cheap Chinese imports.
And we know that there are countries that are finding backdoor entry into U.S. and Canada and the Canadian market, and that's through Mexico. And that can come and be a significant challenge for us and for our industry here. So we're hoping that policies are put in place and we have sufficient and adequate mechanism in place to support our industry.
He says that can be done through the USMCA trade agreement. As for jobs, the company is expecting to have about 600 people hired by the end of the year. Justin Falconer of Workforce Windsor Essex says there are currently 31 job postings.
Lots of engineering roles, including like cell process engineers, cell equipment engineers, module equipment engineers, IT system engineers, and then there's also some quality and inspection roles.
Their HR manager, Ed Navaco, told CBC News last month the employees they are concentrating on will be gaining skills overseas.
That we'll bring on, that we'll send abroad to get training at some of our sister plants over in Europe, and then hopefully they'll come back with that great knowledge and be able to cascade it to the rest of our employees.
People seeking work can go to the website evcareers.ca. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
A co-partner in Windsor's new battery plant says they're making major strides in battery charging. LG Energy Solutions says they can charge premium batteries in 8 minutes. But as the head of North American battery development tells the CBC's Chris Ensing, there are still challenges in production.
It's an advanced plant. And so we're making very impactful, important product there. That is a joint venture that we're doing with our partner, with Stellantis. And so that product is going into a number of vehicles. So it's really important. It's critical for us, and it's critical for Stellantis to support their product. And so I think it's promising, and it's the wave of the future.
And when we think about the future there, what are the barriers or the things that you're trying to overcome now in your role with your team to make sure that you guys are leading the pack through all this?
Yeah, I think just achieving mass production, without disclosing too many specifics, we're getting very close to achieving mass production and being able to make cells and modules to scale with quality and to do it consistently. So that's the most important thing. We're working with our partner in Stellantis and through Nextar Energy, which is the entity that operates out of Windsor. So we're making good progress with that. But I would say, in terms of the challenge, though, is just getting to that point where we can, mass produce X amount within a short, finite amount of time, and to do it with high quality. We're just about there.
Let's take a live look outside there. We're seeing those clouds. Not sure how clear it'll be for those of you chasing comets tonight. When we come back, national and international news for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. Here are the national and international stories we are following, starting with escalating diplomatic tensions between Canada and India. It's after the RCMP alleged that Indian government agents were involved in crimes on Canadian soil.
It wasn't just one or two cities. I heard about it from mayors in different communities in Western Canada and Ontario, heard increasingly about it in Quebec. So the RCMP thought this was an important step to disrupt and dismantle this activity.
That is Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc revealing to CBC News that new information about allegations that the Indian government helped organize a campaign of violence against Canadians. The RCMP laid out the allegations yesterday that implicated Indian diplomatic staff. Ottawa is expelling 6 Indian diplomats, and India has retaliated by giving 6 Canadian diplomats until the end of the week to leave the country.
I'm outside Canada's High Commission here in New Delhi, where it is really quite quiet. The diplomats working in this building are on precarious ground. The top 6 high-level diplomats given until Saturday to get out of the country after we saw both India and Canada expel their highest-level diplomats. We haven't heard much from the Indian government today, but there was a lot of fury in the statements from India's Foreign Affairs Ministry yesterday. India calling the allegations from Canada baseless, preposterous. They say this is all a little bit of politics from Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. They say that he is using this for the election coming up next year in Canada. And so that has been the line from the Indian government from the get-go, although the angry tone has been really quite consistent. It has also escalated this last time around with these latest allegations. And we can see that as well in the view from the media. It is really quite one-sided in favor of the Indian government and the Indians' position here. A lot of news outlets basically condemning Canada, and in particular Justin Trudeau, for these allegations that India's top-level diplomats were somehow involved in a campaign of violence against pro-Khalistani activists in Canada. So that view from the media is quite common. I heard one anchor basically say that Trudeau has shamelessly and confidently lied about India, but that India has ripped him apart on this issue. So a lot of pride from media reports in terms of what they see as a really strong stance from India on this issue. And we see that in the media. I've also have been speaking to some experts. I spoke with a diplomatic affairs editor for an English language daily, and she said she has never seen such chilly relations between India and a country, a so-called friendly country like Canada. She actually even said that this sort of reminds her, or is as bad or even worse than India's relationship with its neighboring country, Pakistan, a historically extremely contentious relationship. And that statement really says a lot about how India and Canada are feeling about each other right now. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
I'm Peter Armstrong in Toronto with some good news for consumers clobbered by the cost of living crisis. For months now, inflation has been heading in the right direction. Inflation peaked way back in 2022 at 8.1%. It's slowly worked its way back toward the Bank of Canada's target window between 1% and 3%. But this was unexpected. In September, we saw the lowest year-over-year rate of inflation since the cost of living crisis kicked off in 2021. The fall came mostly as a result of lower gasoline prices. As concerns over inflation begin to fade, though, that takes at least some of the pressure off the Bank of Canada to keep interest rates higher. Some economists think the central bank will cut rates by 50 basis points next week and another 50 basis points by the end of the year. And even that won't so much stimulate the economy as take the bank's foot off the brake pedal.
So that's where, lower interest rates isn't necessarily, from the Bank of Canada's perspective, adding fuel to growth in the economy. At this point, it's still easing off the brakes until they get interest rates back lower down.
But make no mistake, even as the rate of inflation falls, the price you pay for almost everything is significantly higher than it was. Compared with September of 2021, CPI is up 12.7%, grocery prices have climbed 20.7%, and rent is up 21% over that same period. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
When we come back, a reporter revisits the attack on Capitol Hill in the lead up to the U.S. election. Stay with us. 3 weeks from today, Americans will cast their vote for their next president. And you probably remember the upheaval around the last U.S. election and that assault on the Capitol on January 6th. That day, one of our own reporters, Katie Nicholson, was swarmed by Trump supporters. Nearly 4 years later, she's tracked one of them down.
Whether or not. So that's me on January 6, 2021. After that group of Trump supporters swarmed us that day and the network had to cut away, I've wondered who they were and what their thinking is now, especially now heading into another U.S. election. So I tracked one of them down.
Her name is Tracy Danka, and she invited me to her home in Calabash, North Carolina. Turns out she still believes the 2020 election was stolen, despite more than 60 unsuccessful court challenges, and Trump's own election officials saying it was the most secure election in U.S. history.
You still have doubt?
Yeah, I still have doubt.
That may not be that surprising. A MAGA supporter believing Donald Trump's big lie about a stolen election. But what was surprising was that among her Trump flags, she had a Harris Walls banner on her front lawn.
Well, let me tell you, the only reason why there's a Harris is because I ordered that for my husband.
That's right. Her husband of 26 years, Ed, is a Democrat, and they don't see eye to eye on January 6th.
For me, it was a show of support, patriotism, love.
That was an actual live broadcast, and I know what I saw. I saw people breaking into the Capitol building, attacking officers.
Tracy said she didn't go inside the Capitol. Both were upset by the violence that day. And while they're miles apart on what happened on January 6th, they both share fears about what could happen after this election.
There's going to be trouble, either way, whether he wins or loses.
Before I left, I showed Tracy that moment where our paths first crossed.
Nobody should attack anyone for doing their job, for, speaking their mind, for reporting the news. So, yeah, I would say I was wrong.
As for Tracy and Ed, they may be on two sides of a political divide, but they say their marriage is solid.
Family comes first, and then politics. All we can do is vote for who we think needs to be in that job and hope for the best. And may the better man or woman win.
The question is how long that will take and what happens after a winner is declared. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Before we go, there's been a major incidence of double vision in southwestern Nigeria. An annual festival held over the weekend celebrates twins. Scores of identical siblings turned out for the World Twins Festival. There was plenty of music and dance at the event that was marked by the small and the tall. This region of Nigeria is known for having one of the highest rates of twin births in the world. The ethnic group that dominates in the area has at least one set of twins in every family. And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And don't forget to look up at the sky tonight and try and catch that comet. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.